big silence.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jason Wersland. You all know him through Theragun, Therabody, and a whole bunch of other awesome shit that he's doing right now. And I have heard of you for years through mutual friends, and so excited to actually have the opportunity to meet you and talk to you.
Me too. We were talking about it a second ago, but like think the timing of this is really interesting to me. Like what you're doing, where your focus is now, and then some of the things we're doing. So I think it's perfect timing.
Yeah. So I want to start because you had, I mean, I think everyone has a Therabody or a Theragun or their gym does. I was just talking about my gym has like collective has probably like 20 of them lined up. And then I have two here at my house in my home gym. And want to go through the history and just how that even came about. Why you why?
Well, um, we were talking about some things a minute ago.
Mhm.
I was in a motorcycle accident in 2007,
Oh, wow.
and sometimes trauma brings about blessings. It took a while for that to happen. But I was a chiropractor in Los Angeles. I'd had a practice for a couple years. I got in a motorcycle accident on the freeway. In LA, you can split traffic. Splitting
Mhm.
traffic, a car cut me off and I hit the side of this car going about 55 miles an hour. Messed me up pretty good. I jumped up from the accident. It knocked me out. I was feeling my body like, am I dead? What happened?
Oh.
And I sustained soft tissue damage in my neck and my shoulder. So I
Mm.
ended up having a 9 millimeter disc bulge in my neck on the right side. It's ended up causing atrophy, and I couldn't feel these three fingers. As a chiropractor, I knew what I needed, but I couldn't get it unless I went to somebody. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I reached out to medical providers in LA that I'm friends with, and hey, what do you do about this? And they said, well, surgery is probably the best thing we could do. And then we could put you on some drugs in the meantime. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, what if I want neither one of those things?
Mhm.
And so I just was in my office, in my practice, and I was looking around, and everything that I had in there, Karina, was for chronic issues.
Mhm.
It was for spinal manipulation and all these different things. It wasn't for an acute issue. I knew what each of my modalities did, and as I walked around the room, I was like, none of this is going to help me. I'm in a place right now where I just need the pain to stop.
Mhm.
I went in one of my rooms. We have a vibrating table that we lay patients on to do traction, spinal traction. The vibration takes the pressure takes the tension away, so the body can't splint or guard against it. So I was sitting there looking at the table, and I was like, I wonder if that'll help my shoulder. So I thought, well, I need to get that as close to my shoulder as I can. So I grabbed a chair, slid up to the table, raised the table, and I just leaned my arm against the table, and the vibration felt amazing. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, this feels so good. 30 seconds later, the pain came back. And so I'm like, that's interesting. Step down for a second. I do it again. As I'm sitting in the room, I'm realizing what accommodation is. I learned about it in school. We deal with it. Every single human on the planet deals with it, but it's not something that you're taught, especially in that type of situation. So I see you have earrings on. You might have a watch, uh, shoes, socks,
No,
belt, whatever. Oh,
no
you don't.
watch.
How about a bracelet? I saw a bracelet on there. Yeah.
Yes.
You're probably not aware of that until I said that because
Mm.
the body takes that information and it accommodates that. So it ends up moving to what's more important. Right now, you and I talking are more important than your bracelet. So this thing I was leaning on, my body was accommodating to, and it was doing it really quickly because the pain was so much stronger than this vibration. One of the things I learned, and I got to drop this knowledge every once in a while, is when you put something against your skin, vibration or Theragun, that information travels to the brain at 268 miles an hour. Pain, whether it's self-induced or you have some sort of injury, travels to the brain at about 55 miles an hour. So this vibration was getting to my brain faster. But after a minute, the pain signal going into my brain became much more prevalent. So that situation, I was like, wait, there's something here. I
Mhm.
found another tool in my office that called the vibracussor, was about the size of a Coke can. Got this little bottle here. I put it underneath my armpit like this, and the vibration would do the same thing as the table. But again, it didn't last for more than like 30 seconds. And I'm like, ugh, like I was so mad. So I was laying in I lived in Culver City at the time. I was sitting on my couch, 3 in the morning, and I was using this thing back and forth, taking it out, letting the pain come back, having it because it wouldn't work after 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I was thinking to myself, okay, accommodation happens when something is touching the skin in it constantly, like your bracelet. If I could move that back and forth like this, what if I had something that punched the skin? Well,
Mhm,
I grew up our family had a farm. I spent my summers there. I worked in the power tool world. I did flooring, all types of stuff. So I knew, and I was like, immediately, I'm like, well, that's a jigsaw. Well, I wanted it so bad that I didn't care how loud it was. I was going to try and figure something out. Ran to my garage, brought this jigsaw in, sat there and messed around with this jigsaw, and I started using it on my body. And I wrapped a dish towel around the blade, and then I wrapped electrical tape around the dish towel, and I started using that on my arm. Well, I realized that was hurting my arm, like the tape edges were poking my skin. So I grabbed a practice foam golf ball out of my golf bag and I put it on, and that's what started this whole process. This is the point I'm getting to. I suddenly realized that what I was doing with this tool was lasting. My body was not accommodating to it. So it
mhm,
dropped my pain from a 9 or a 10 to a 3 or a 4. And now I could eat and shower and fall asleep for a minute. And I'm thinking to myself, this is amazing. Someone had to have thought of this. So I thought, in the meantime, I'm going to use this janky thing that I made. So I basically used that from 2000. My accident was in 2007. So
I
from
see.
January of 2008 to July of 2008, I
Mhm,
used this thing to get myself better. And I learned a lot through those 7 months. Just experiencing it on myself. I would take it to Gold's Gym and I'd plug it in and I'd bring all my weights over to Gold, over to where I had this Theragun plugged in. It wasn't called a Theragun at the time. And I would use it between my sets. And I started realizing that's why we have it at Collective. That's why
mhm.
it's at places like that, because using it between your sets takes away the lactic acid burn. So now the toxins are not in your body that long and your recovery is much faster. So I used it to get better. I got better. I went back to practice. I thought I'll run into this somewhere down the road. A patient came in several months later and he was in a head on bus collision in Los Angeles. He was a bus driver. And his stats, his demographic, his paper, his intake form was me again. You just had to change the name. It was a
Mhm.
similar injury. He didn't have a very good income. His insurance sucked. He had like 12 visits a year. So I was sitting there thinking to myself, he's this guy's not going to get better with my tool, with what we have in our office. And I immediately thought to myself, God, I wonder if this will work on him. So I asked him to come back the next day. I took x-rays. I asked him to bring his wife back because I needed someone else to be there to make sure he was going to do this. I brought this thing in a in a grocery bag to my office because I don't want to bring a jigsaw in my office. Chiropractors are already kind of looked at sideways, but so he comes in, I sit him down and I said, "Listen, I'm going to show you something that I use because I went through this experience and I think it's going to help you." So I watched it help him on a daily basis. I would call him, make sure he was using it just to relieve the pain.
Mhm.
I'm going to wrap this story up here. At the end of his treatment, I had been gone for a couple of weeks and I came back to my office and my secretary said, "Your patient's in your room." And I walked back to my room. And as I walked to the room, I could hear the gun on. And I turned the corner and he was sitting on this bench, just doing this around his body. And he looked at me with these big brown eyes, and the whites of his eyes were so white now from being out of pain. And he said, "Doc, you have to figure this out. This thing saved my life." And I
Mm.
remember that moment. All of us, I think, at some point in our life have these moments where suddenly it's like some gush of wind hit me and the universe punched me in the chest. And I realized I got to figure this out. So for the next 8 years, that's what I did. Some people think, "Oh, wow, you came out of nowhere."
Yeah, I know, I get that. They're like, "Overnight success." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I've had
Yeah.
Tone It Up
Yeah.
for 14
Yeah.
years."
Yeah. How
Plus,
many?
then prior to the 14 years of founding Tone It Up, prior to that was being an athlete and a trainer and everything else. So, it's like, since it's been 20 years,
I
21.
think what's really cool about that, what you just said, is all of those things you did in your life came full circle and now it's serving you in a really cool way.
Yeah,
Um,
and the thing you said, believe you said that how trauma, your motorcycle accident has I don't a gift or a reason, and you found it, and then you were able to create, you know, Therabody. And I would say my trauma that we were talking about growing up with a schizophrenic mother, and suffering my own, depression through having a mother in and out of the house and the trauma of that relationship and being a teenage suicide survivor, I fitness was what saved me. And naturally, just like you were mentioning, you wanted to not be on all the drugs. I didn't never took anything to, um, help with my depression and my anxiety. I was like, "I'm just gonna run. I'm gonna bike. I'm gonna swim. I'm gonna surf." And that became my therapy and my drug. And then I got into triathlon, and then I got it's just it's
Wow.
int so my first question for you, though, do you still ride motorcycles?
I do, but not in Los Angeles. I it's I will probably never stop that, as crazy as that sounds, but anyone that rides bikes knows that. But I will not ride one in the morning on the freeway in LA anymore. That's like
Ooh,
it's
yeah,
death.
you met Bobby briefly, and he used to ride in LA, and he had an accident on, like, some of the curvy roads in, like, Topanga Canyon or Malibu or somewhere over
Uh-huh.
there, and he rides a little now, but he hasn't in a long time, which he probably should use a Theragun more because so in the back of our house, we're on 7 acres here, but the back is 12 miles of dirt biking trails. And so, if you're ever in Austin and I don't know if you ride dirt bikes, but it's
That's where I learned. I
oh,
rode those when I was little. My wife and I have a place in Austin.
you do? Okay. Well, you
Yeah.
got so we're, Emma Long Park is right here,
Oh, cool.
and so Bobby will ride there, but he's taking some time off because he ran into a tree, and it's a rough
It
trail. It's a
happens.
very
It
hard trail.
happens.
Yeah. I know, actually, we were talking about Jeremy. Jeremy tried to go out with him one day, and Jeremy was like, "Nope, this is, like, not worth it." So, at your own
Yeah.
risk, come on by. So so
For
I
the
love
invite.
yeah. And so then I love your connection between wellness is the both the physical and the mental.
Yeah.
How did you bring that together and that realization? Because I feel like even in the beginning of Tone It Up, it was all just physical, physical. But then you realize, like, wait a second, if I stop working out, I stop moving my body, taking care of my body, for me personally, I start to feel sad.
Yeah. Uh, people use this term, but when you're not moving, when you're not treating your body, when you're not taking part in those types of activities, you get into your head and suddenly things start to become really distorted, and if you can get out of your head and into your body, then you can now have a better experience, a better life experience. So the way it happened for me, Karina, is I work on a lot of athletes and some of the best
Mhm,
in the world, and you'll probably relate to this. But I would work on them, and I was thinking to myself, why is he not getting better? Why like? And so I would talk to the person, and I'd realize this guy has a stress that is not going away, whether it's his family situation, whatever the situation is, he's got a stressor. And I don't know that unless I ask them. And so I'm
mhm,
thinking to myself, I can't just treat the body. We make the best products in the world for the body.
mhm,
And I could put something on your legs, the jet boots, and you'd be like, these are so amazing, but that's not going to fix your mind. So we had to find this connection. And our connection now is with a bunch of products we just launched in last September, is really about a mind body connection, getting out of your head into your body. We came out with smart goggles. We have a TheraFace, which is a Theragun for your face that's really calming and relaxing.
I heard
So what
about
I
that.
started realizing was a couple of things, Karina. I realized no matter what I do for the body, if they're in their head, it's not going to work. So I have to address that. And then I also realized that this idea of breathing and meditation and what
Mhm,
that can do for the body was super important. Um, and then sound therapy. I
mhm.
learned sound therapy. You may have remembered our G2 Pro. The thing sounded like a chainsaw, so loud. But the ironic thing about it is the sound matched the stimulation, like the
Yeah,
way the thing was touching your body. So now, laying there on the table, you're hearing what you're feeling. And I watched this really cool experience with several people where it was sort of zoned them out. And so
yeah.
I'm like, what is that? There's something there. So you fast forward that experience to what we have now, and it's TheraMind, where there's specific frequencies, specific tunes and tones to get your body into a different state. And I can I can access someone's sympathetic or parasympathetic through their brain by listening to something as quickly as I can their body, or even faster. So it was a bunch of things, probably just like things you've experienced. It
Mhm.
was several things, having a great science team, having a great innovation team, people that are helping me sort of figure out what this is. So our sound lounger, we call it a Therabody Lounger. It has sound frequency in it, and you gotta try one of those.
I know where yeah, absolutely. Because 'cause I'm very because I'm I have a lot of trauma in my body of, I don't know your childhood or what went on, but mine was so traumatic, and then I was a caretaker for my mother until she passed, and, like, I'm just still going through grief even though it's been a year and a half, and I have a lot of anxiety, so meditation, important to me. Um, Working out. Today, I did not wanna go to the gym, but I went. You always say you never regret a workout. I'm like, "Karina,
Yeah.
just go." I have my trainer, Sandy, there. I don't know if you know Sandy at Collective, she's the best.
I don't know her.
Yeah, and I was like, "Okay, I got this." And then I went to the cold plunge. I have a cold plunge here. I have, like, a little mini gym and wellness center here, but literally for anything mental, so it's kinda like would you say, like, the bracelet analogy?
Uh,
You shift your mind, like, going into cold water relaxes me, and it's a meditation, and I can see even I have the Theragun here, and doing that, it's your mind goes elsewhere, and you have to focus on, something else than the thoughts in your head, and I was yeah, out of your head and into your body, and I also say something too, like, out of your mind and into your heart, like, you just gotta get out
yes.
of here.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was with a patient last week, and I didn't know this. His sister had passed unexpectedly in a really traumatic way, and
Mm,
his back pain wasn't going away.
mm,
And I was like, I got him up off the table. I'm like, "This isn't your back. This is something else.
mhm,
Let me talk about
mhm,
it." He's a patient I've had for a while, and so we were having a conversation and started asking him questions, and he finally got to his sister, and he sort of got emotional. Like, he
mm,
had that lump in his throat, and I'm like,
mhm,
"That's what it is." So we gotta
mhm,
focus on that. Somehow we need to focus on that.
mhm,
That's up here. That's
mhm,
nothing that I can find in his body except for the fact that he pushed it down. I tell him he pushed it in his back pocket, so it's sitting in his low back. But I think this idea that you just talked about is super important for people to realize. You can't think your way out of anything. Trevor
mhm,
Mowad says this, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't think your way out of anything. You have to do your way out of things.
mhm,
So I thought what's interesting is you just said you run, you surf, you bike, you do all these things. Those are all doing things. And when you're doing those things, you're not thinking. You're not having to think about, oh, I don't know if I want to do that today, or I don't know if that's something I'm really interested in. You're actually doing it. And when you do something, it takes you out of your head and into your body. And that's something that I think is so powerful that people need to understand. And it's really subtle. Like, it's not that hard.
yeah,
It's just taking the time to do it, you know?
yeah, and thinking of the mind-body connection too, even with me with my trainer, like, she'll know when she's training me, because just with, like, 2020 and everything, I'm a fitness person, and I stopped working out, so I'm like, I need a trainer, be like, "Get here." I'm like, "Okay."
I
But
hear you.
she'll
I hear you.
yeah, right? But she'll know by the way I move my body, she's like, "Are you stressed today? Because your low back is tight, and I can tell by the way you're moving." And she's like, "You need to go to there's the chiropractic office at the gym and get some body." I'm like, "Yeah." Like, right now, I'm like, "My low back freaking hurts." But even as a trainer, like, she can see that in the way that I train, and, yeah, it's fascinating. I wanna hear more about the sound lounger again. You briefly mentioned it, but
Yeah.
so what is this? When did it come out? Where do you get it? Like,
So
I'm
we actually sell it on the website.
yeah.
We have I mentioned this earlier, but we have Reset, which are our recovery centers. We have one in Houston, Chicago, Philadelphia, two in Los Angeles, and we're opening another one in New York. Excuse me. That's where you can experience the lounger. But let me tell you what the lounger is. In 2019, just before COVID, we opened our first reset in Philadelphia, in Fishtown in Philly. And we were looking for some way to make IVs
Mhm.
like not a waste of time where people are just sitting there on their phone. We wanted it to be something that we're really engaged with intention. And that's where we started thinking about these loungers. So we found a lounger from a company called So Sound that put their what they called sound hearts inside of the chair. So when I put the headphones on, the first time I tried this, Karina, it was like I was like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing in the world." Put the headphones on. I sat back in this huge lounger. Felt like I was it was a leather lounger. It was way bigger than me. I sit back and I was out. I would dropped in like 20 seconds. This
Mhm.
guy's voice comes on. He says, "Hi,
Mm.
let's take some time." And I was just like, "Oh my god." I don't remember them putting a needle in my arm.
Mhm.
And by the time I was done with this experience, I was like, "We have to do this. This
Yeah.
has to be something we do." Because I could talk about it forever. I think reading it makes more sense. TheraMind is our science backed audio content purposely produced to improve your mental health and physical well being by
Mhm.
activating your sympathetic, which is your performance part of your nervous system, or your parasympathetic, which is your recovery part of your nervous system. So it's if this is the experience, I'll describe it to you. You get in the lounger, it's a zero gravity lounger, so it immediately kicks you back and it figures out where your center of gravity is. You plug in your headphones, so now you have headphones on, and then in our recovery centers, they'll plug you into TheraMind, and they'll ask you, "What do you want? You want energized? You want relaxed? You want focus? Focus like meditation, or do
Mhm.
you want to sleep?" And then we'll feed you music that has specific frequencies in the gamma, alpha, beta, theta waves, depending on what you want to do. So you'll get an alpha wave coming through if you want to focus, because that doesn't put you to sleep, but it keeps you in that state just before you go to sleep. So now you're laying in the lounger, zero gravity, and you're kicked back with headphones on, and your entire body is feeling the same frequencies as what you're hearing. So this company we bought found a way, which is crazy, to send sound through hard objects. Sound usually needs air to travel.
Mhm.
These people found a way to send frequencies through the hard objects. It's amazing. Every person I put in this chair is like blown away. Um, I was at, do you know what Cybec is?
No.
It's a gym conference like where all the top principals from like Equinox and Exos and like EOS and all these different places they go, and it's sort of a conference.
Yep.
And I had some people that have been in the gym world for a long time sitting in that, and they were like, "This is the coolest thing I've seen."
I love that. That sounds like a dream,
It,
and
it it's
it is.
amazing. I'm telling you, like, my goal for that, Karina, honestly, is that every household has one of those
Yeah.
where you can go and sit down and take time for yourself. Everything in our house is like based around what you do. Like
Yeah.
I'm in the living room because I'm living. I'm in the bedroom. Like, but if you have a place where you can go, and you know that's your zen or your flow space, that's super important. I think for all of us to have.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I love how the mindfulness has become less woo-woo. Even as I bring meditation in to tone it up, probably like 5 years ago, but I was, like, kind of nervous to do it because some people were like, "No, that's too granola, that's too woo-woo," but I'm like, "But it's something I do every day." And now you see it in the mental health conversation and also with speaking of mental health, like, I never shared my story until 5 years ago because of
Wow.
the stigma with it. But now we're all hopefully helping each other as we're opening up conversations around mental health. We're talking about meditation. We're talking about all of these, biohacking things that make us mentally better. Why we're actually working out. For me, it's not physical. I mean, it's great to like have muscle and the aesthetic of it all. But for me, it's literally just it's mental. And you have really been a pioneer now to really help with the mental health, but kind of also with the physical. So I think that's genius, and I love the idea that I I go to a place here in Austin, you get the IVs and the NAD and all this stuff, and I
Yeah.
sit there and I'm like, "So just sit on your phone. So isn't that, like, counterproductive? You're on your
Totally.
phone, but doing
Yeah.
something wellness.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I was like, "Can I get, like, a foot soak or, something?" Like, you gotta so I
Yeah.
love that idea. Yeah, you definitely there's a few great places out here that, you should have your sound
The lounger.
lounger in. Yeah.
There's something you were saying that I thought about.
Mhm,
Nowadays, I think the mindfulness part of our lives are being talked about by people like you.
mhm,
You're a quote unquote normal person. You're successful, you've worked your butt off to do something. You're not a woo-woo guy. You're not
mhm,
Anthony Robbins or someone that you would expect to hear this from. I was with one of the top entertainers uh, around in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and he talked about meditation like it was brushing his teeth. Like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I got to go meditate. I'll be back in a little bit. Like that, I think that's what's making it much more acceptable and open is that there's regular normal people saying, no, I do this. It's a practice I do every day. So to me, I think it's just echoing that information and getting it out there. And a lot of times people don't know what to do. Like, they
mhm,
don't know what to do when they meditate. So,
yeah,
what our products are for is for the novice, the person that doesn't know what they're doing, so they can get in the sound lounger and they can drop in without knowing what that means. And then you get people like you and I, you're dropped in 30 seconds and now you're creating your own world in your mind and it's really really powerful. So, that's those are the ways we kind of think about making products
mhm,
is does it work for someone like my mom who doesn't really take part in all the activities and recovery and all that? Does it work as well for her? And does she get it? And can she make it work for her as quickly as I can you or some other top performing person? And that's how we see things. Our innovation team is can it be usable and accessible from the bottom to the top? Or I don't know if that's the best way to compare it, but you know what I mean, end to end.
yeah, so what would your tips be? Because that is a lot of questions that I get. Number 1, mindfulness. Some people don't do anything for mindfulness because don't know they're afraid that they're not gonna do it right, or they just don't even know where to start. And the same thing with fitness too. There's a lot of fear of fitness or going to the chiropractor or
Uh-huh.
anything. Everyone there's this, like, fear base, like, how do you overcome anything and just do and without judgment?
Well, I think the first thing when people are thinking about meditating, that I think they think if you haven't done it before, you think you just close your eyes and you start thinking about something. But as well as anyone that does this, that breathing and gratitude is the key that opens the door to meditation.
Mhm,
So if you can breathe and be grateful for something in your life, we all have reasons to be grateful. It takes you into your heart. So now you're breathing and you're in your body. And then you start thinking about how grateful you are for things. And that pulls you into your heart. And if you can stay in that, it's not in your head.
mhm,
Meditation is not in your head. Meditation is a full heart body experience. So my recommendation, my advice is if you haven't meditated, if you haven't done this before, think of meditation as breathing gratitude. And if you
mhm.
can do that sort of breath work with gratitude, you'll find that 2 minutes went by like that. And I was with someone the other day that said they meditated for 4 hours with Joe Dispenza, and I was like, "What? Oh my god, that'd be amazing!" But he said the
I
time just flew by because I wasn't really paying attention to that. I was in my space. I was in my heart. I was in my body. So I think for me, that's I don't know where you're at with that kind of stuff, but for me, that's why we create the products that we do to get you out of your head into your body, and you can think through your heart. So that's a
yeah.
big key, I think. And I have a daughter. She's 23. I have nephews and or nieces that are all females that have had mental health issues.
Mhm.
One of them, you mentioned a suicide survivor. One of them is a survivor, and
Yeah.
it's because of the trauma that she was experiencing in her home. And she has anxiety right now. And I'm helping her learn how to breathe that away.
Mhm.
Because I think if she thinks it's in her head, she doesn't even want to go there. You probably know what that's like.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think that's a big key to me. And it doesn't take anything. You don't have to buy anything. You
Yeah.
just like sit down and take the time to do it. Now, we have a lot of products I'd love you to buy because they do enhance the situation. But yeah, I think the breath work and gratitude is a really big one.
Yeah, you mentioned 2 minutes too, like, everyone's like, "I don't have 20 minutes a day, I don't have 4 hours a day."
Yeah, right.
Sometimes in days where I'm just like, 2 minutes, do it, and it makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
And, your friend that you're mentioning, 4 hours with Joe Dispenza, I've it's incredible. About in 2018, I was, like, just going through so much. My mom was hospitalized with a stroke and just this, and I'm all of a sudden just married and then caretaker, and I was just, like, a lot, and my anxiety level was at, like, a 1 out of 10, it was a 15. I went to this retreat with Kyle Cease, he's been on the podcast, and when it was 5 days, I set aside the time. I was like, "You deserve this." And sometimes we would meditate up to in silence for 6 hours. And I brought my husband, and the first 2 days, he was like, "Can we leave? This is awful. This is awful." And then I'm like, "We got this. We got this." And then by the end of the 5 days, he was like, "Can we sign up for the next one?" I was
Can
like,
we
"Yeah."
not go home?
Yeah, he would just live here in silence. But even one of our, like, favorite dates was, 24 hours in silence, and I was like, "This is, like, my favorite time." We sat on the porch and looked at the ocean and the rainbow and just smiled. I don't know, I really
I
meditation,
love
that's,
that.
like, the free way because when you look at everything that, in the wellness industry, it can be very costly, but there are the tools that are free. But then, of course, you gotta get the other good stuff too. I mean,
Yeah,
it makes a big difference, and
it
I love
does. It makes that 2 minutes, like,
yeah.
so much better. You use our smart goggles. I tell people all this a lot when I talk. If each time we transitioned from something in our life, from podcast producer to wife to workout person to sister to daughter, if there was a way to be able to say, just give me 30 seconds and you could
Mhm.
breathe and meditate and have intention going into that next role in our life, I think that's it's really special. So to be able to have something you can use on your body that makes the most out of that 30 seconds to 2 minutes, if you have it, that to me would be, I think that would change the world if people take a moment to really go into the next thing they're doing with intention. But again, the reason I was mentioning that is we create the products we create to make them efficient and effective. It's not something you have to do for 6 hours.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good point that you just made too, because we all do have these different roles in life and everything you listed, and I think it can be hard to go from doing a podcast to shooting content, going in a board meeting, doing this, and, like, it is just that 30 seconds. I would challenge everyone listening to take that 30 seconds as you transition through your roles through the day, but well, thank you, Doctor Jason. I am gonna find myself a sound lounger somewhere. But anything
Well,
last
next
things
time
you
you're in
wanna
LA,
share?
please let me
Yeah,
know. I'll
I'm
get you your husband in there. I would love that.
I
You
am
guys gotta
going to
try it.
be
There's one
in
in Manhattan Beach in the Village.
oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, right there by, like, it's across Macy's from the mall
Yeah, yeah, okay.
on that
Yeah,
road.
I'm gonna be in LA, between Palm Springs and LA for almost 2 weeks starting this week, and I think with Jeremy, we're gonna have an event, so we're coming out with, a wine.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
we developed wines through Slate Theory, which is a beautiful family out of Fredericksburg who started this wine company that is actually based around mental health. So they're our partners, and we have
Oh,
a wines coming out called The Therapist and The Patient.
I love that.
Yeah. So we will keep you in the loop. Uh,
Please.
anything else you want to share where you want people to go?
No, I mean, our
Yeah.
website's
Yeah.
therabody.com. I think it's what's most important, what I'd love to share is a message of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, meditation is the key that really helps your mental health, but understanding what that means. It's not in your head, it's in your body and in your heart.
The big silence. The big silence.